Karla Homolka's name is forever etched in infamy, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone familiar with her story. As the partner in crime to Paul Bernardo, she played a critical role in one of the most horrifying series of murders that Canada has ever seen. Together they formed a deadly duo, leaving a trail of devastation and heartbreak in their wake. Homolka was not just an accomplice, she was an active participant. Her involvement went far beyond what anyone could have imagined, revealing a dark and twisted side that shocked the nation. She helped lure victims, facilitated the assaults, and often participated in the abuse. Her actions were not those of a passive bystander, but of someone deeply involved in the planning and execution of these heinous crimes. This wasn't a case of a woman manipulated by a domineering partner. Homolka was a willing and enthusiastic participant. She played an integral role in the crimes, showing no hesitation or remorse. The crimes began with her own sister, Tammy Homolka, and continued with other young girls, including Leslie Mahaffey. The betrayal of her own family added another layer of horror to her actions. These were not random acts of violence. They were calculated, planned, and executed with chilling precision. Each step was meticulously thought out, leaving little room for error. The pair operated in southern Ontario, using their charm and good looks to lure unsuspecting teenage girls into their deadly trap. Their ability to appear normal and trustworthy made them even more dangerous. Homolka, with her girl-next-door appearance, hid a monstrous side that the public could scarcely believe. Her innocent facade masked the true extent of her involvement in these brutal crimes. This essay delves into the details of their crimes, the legal proceedings that followed, and the controversial plea deal that allowed Karla Homolka to eventually walk free. The story of Karla Homolka serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a seemingly innocent exterior. The first known victim of Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo was Tammy Homolka, Karla's own younger sister. Tammy was just 15 when her life was brutally taken away by the very people she trusted most. On December 23, 1990, Tammy was drugged, raped, and ultimately killed in the Homolka family home. This heinous act was orchestrated by Karla and Paul together. Karla had stolen sedatives from her workplace to subdue her sister. The couple then videotaped their horrific assault on Tammy. The drugs caused Tammy to choke on her own vomit, leading to her death. Karla and Paul staged the scene to make it look like an accidental choking, fooling the authorities, at least temporarily. This act of betrayal was a stark indicator of Karla's capacity for evil. Leslie Mahaffey was a 14-year-old girl whose life was brutally cut short by Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo. On June 15, 1991, Leslie was abducted from her home in Burlington, Ontario. She had been locked out of her house after returning home late from a friend's wake, making her an easy target for the predatory couple. Karla and Paul took Leslie back to their home, where they kept her captive for 24 hours. During this time, they subjected her to unspeakable torture and sexual abuse, all of which they videotaped. Leslie's ordeal ended when Paul strangled her to death, with Karla complicit in the act. They then dismembered her body and encased the parts in concrete, which they disposed of in a lake. Leslie's remains were discovered by chance 2 weeks later, leading to a massive police investigation. The series of heinous crimes committed by Karla and Paul unfolded primarily in southern Ontario, a region that quickly became synonymous with fear and horror. The couple operated with a calculated and methodical approach, choosing their victims carefully and ensuring that their crimes left little immediate evidence for authorities to find. Their modus operandi involved using their seemingly normal lives as a cover, making them difficult to suspect or detect. The media frenzy surrounding their capture and trial was unprecedented and intense. As details of their crimes emerged, the public and press were both captivated and horrified by the revelations. Every new revelation about their methods and the extent of their brutality fed a growing sense of outrage and disbelief among the public. The couple's good looks and apparent normalcy only added to the media's fascination and public intrigue. Section 5. The plea deal and testimony against Paul Bernardo. One of the most controversial aspects of the case was the plea deal offered to Karla Homolka. In exchange for her testimony against Paul Bernardo, Karla received a reduced sentence of 12 years for manslaughter. This deal, often referred to as the deal with the devil, sparked widespread outrage and debate about the justice system's handling of her case. Karla's testimony was crucial in securing a conviction against Paul. She portrayed herself as a battered woman who was coerced into committing the crimes. This narrative, however, was later contradicted by the videotapes that surfaced, showing her active and willing participation in the assaults and murders. The public felt betrayed by the justice system, which seemed to have allowed a dangerous criminal to receive a lenient sentence in exchange for her cooperation. This deal highlighted the complexities and sometimes flawed nature of plea bargaining in the legal system. Section 6. Paul Bernardo's life sentence. While Karla Homolka received a controversial plea deal, Paul Bernardo faced a much harsher fate. In 1995, he was convicted of the murders of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, as well as numerous sexual assaults, and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. His designation as a dangerous offender meant that he would likely never be released. Bernardo's trial was a harrowing affair, filled with graphic evidence and emotional testimonies. The videotapes that documented the couple's crimes played a central role in the proceedings. These tapes were so disturbing that they were only described in court, not shown, to spare the jury and public from their full horror. The evidence left no doubt about Bernardo's guilt and his sadistic nature. Paul's life sentence was met with a sense of relief and justice by the public and the victims' families. Section 7. Public outrage and justice system debates. The public reaction to the case of Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo was one of outrage and disbelief. Many people were horrified not only by the nature of the crimes, but also by the perceived leniency of Karla's sentence. The plea deal she received became a focal point for debates about the justice system and its ability to adequately punish those involved in heinous crimes. Victims' rights advocates were particularly vocal, arguing that the plea deal failed to deliver justice for the victims and their families. The notion that Karla could walk free after participating in such atrocious acts was seen as a miscarriage of justice. This sentiment was echoed in media coverage and public forums, where discussions about the case often turned heated. The case also sparked broader debates about the use of plea bargains in criminal prosecutions. Section 8. Karla Homolka's release in 2005. Karla Homolka was released from prison in 2005 after serving her 12-year sentence. Her release marked the end of a highly controversial and closely watched period of incarceration. Her release was met with widespread media coverage and public outrage. News outlets from across the country descended upon the scene, eager to capture every moment of her newfound freedom. Many people were deeply troubled by the fact that she was allowed to re-enter society after participating in such horrific crimes. Public protests erupted, with people holding signs and chanting slogans against her release. Upon her release, Karla sought to rebuild her life, but her notoriety made this difficult. She often had to disguise herself to avoid recognition and potential backlash from the public. She changed her name and moved several times in an attempt to escape public scrutiny. Each new location brought a fresh start, but also the constant fear of being discovered. Each move, however, was closely followed by the media and the public, who were determined to keep track of her whereabouts. The relentless pursuit by journalists made it nearly impossible for her to live a normal life. The families of the victims, in particular, were vocal in their opposition to her freedom. They felt that justice had not been fully served, and that her release was a constant reminder of their loss. Karla's release also raised questions about the rehabilitation of criminals and the capacity for reintegration into society after serving time for serious offenses. Debates ensued about whether the justice system was too lenient or if it was fulfilling its role in rehabilitating offenders. Some argued that she had served her sentence and deserved a chance to start over, while others believed that her crimes were too severe to warrant forgiveness or a second chance. The split opinions highlighted the ongoing struggle between justice and mercy in the criminal justice system. Section 9. Public reaction to Homolka's release. The public reaction to Karla Homolka's release was overwhelmingly negative. Protests erupted in various communities where she attempted to settle. People felt that her freedom was an affront to the memory of her victims and a failure of the justice system. The intense media scrutiny ensured that her every move was watched, and societal trust in the legal system was further eroded. Support for the victims' families surged, with many people expressing their solidarity and empathy. Memorials and vigils were held to honor the lives of the young girls who were so brutally taken. Karla's attempts to live a normal life were met with consistent resistance. Employers, neighbors, and community members were often unwilling to accept her presence, driven by a combination of fear and moral outrage. Section 10. Lasting impact on victim rights and legal reforms. The case of Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo had a profound impact on victim rights and legal reforms in Canada. Their heinous crimes shocked the nation and brought to light many flaws within the justice system. The widespread public outrage and extensive media coverage highlighted significant gaps in the justice system, particularly in how plea deals were negotiated and the rights of victims and their families were represented. The public demanded changes, and the government had to respond. One of the key outcomes was increased advocacy for the rights of crime victims. Organizations and activists began to push harder for reforms that would ensure victims were not overlooked in the judicial process. There was a significant push for legislation that would ensure victims' families had a greater voice in the judicial process and that their suffering was appropriately acknowledged and addressed. This included measures to provide more support and resources for victims and their families. This led to the development of victim impact statements, which allow families to express the emotional and psychological toll of the crimes during sentencing. These statements have become a crucial part of the sentencing process, giving victims a platform to be heard. The controversy surrounding Karla's plea deal also prompted a re-evaluation of how such agreements were handled. The public felt betrayed by the leniency of her sentence, which led to calls for more stringent oversight. Legal reforms aimed at increasing transparency and accountability in plea negotiations were introduced, ensuring that any deals made were in the public interest and did not undermine the severity of the crimes committed. These changes have helped to restore some public trust in the justice system and ensure that justice is served more fairly.